Greetings, Wambui Bahati here. Welcome to Wambui Made It. This is the first tutorial in our sewing series, our Easy Sewing Machine Project series. And our first project is this beautiful, wonderful drawstring pouch. Isn't it cute? This is going to be our first project in this series. Now, I have listed underneath this video a list of materials that you will need. And also you can download that list and or the pattern. Now let me tell you something about the pattern. Unless you're just somebody that really loves downloading stuff, you don't have to download actually anything for this first project, because as I said, the material list will be below, and the pattern is actually an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So that's the regular size of a regular sheet of paper here in the United States. So 8.5 by 11 is the pattern that we're going to be using to cut out the fabric for our drawstring pouch. Okay, I've divided the tutorial into 3 videos. This is the first one and part 1, and of course part 2 and part 3 will follow. I have uploaded them all at one time so that you can go right through without any breaks if you decide to do that. I just didn't want the video to be one huge long video. Okay, so go at your own pace. If you have any questions along the way, or if there's anything that you'd like for me to slow down, any questions about anything, then just ask me. Okay, so with all of that said, I hope that you will enjoy making this drawstring pouch as much as I enjoy making drawstring pouches. Okay, so with all of that said, let's just get to it. I'm excited because we are ready to make our pouch. We're actually going to do some things and get to the point where we actually sew. And so I hope you have washed your fabric. There was a tools and supplied list in the post before this. I have washed my fabric. I washed up a few pieces of fabric, but the one I'm going to use is I'm going to go ahead and use this one because I believe that if I use this and use black thread, it's going to help you to see my seams and see what I'm doing better. But by all means, if you have some exciting patterns and colors and fabric that is just exciting, then please use that, because the more exciting your pattern is and your colors are, oh, look at this one, colors are, then the more exciting your pouch is going to be. So I'm going to use this one, and until we finish, you're probably not going to see my face again. You're only going to see my hands working to make the pouch. I'm still with you. You will not see my face, but you will see my hands. You know what? Let's make a pouch. The first thing you want to do is get your fabric, and after you have washed your fabric, I highly recommend washing your fabric. I talk about that earlier on in one of the posts where I'm talking about fabrics. So I recommend that you wash it, and then you're going to press it. So wherever you're sewing, if you don't have room where you're sewing for your iron to be set up, set your iron up wherever it needs to be, and just know that whenever you come from the sewing machine, the first place you're going to go is to the ironing board to iron your product or project that you're working on. Now, I have this woolen mat. It's 100% wool, and it's really thick, and wherever I put this mat down, that becomes my ironing surface. And because it's 100% wool, it really does help get the heat through the fabric. So I really like this mat. I'll put in the information for you where you can get this mat. I also love this iron. This is a Panasonic cordless iron. I believe if you just search a Panasonic cordless iron, you'll find this iron at several places on the internet. Okay, so after you've ironed your fabric, you want it to look real neat and smooth and clean. We want to start working with something that's fabulous. Okay, so already it looks good. Okay, and we haven't even done anything. Right now, the next thing you want to do is fold your fabric in on itself, meaning the side that's going to be the outside of your pouch. I am going to call this the bright side as opposed to the dull side. You want the bright sides to kiss each other. You want to fold it, and then you want to get your pattern. Now, the pattern that I have for download looks like this, and on it has the tools and materials that you need. Cut 2 is telling you that we need to cut 2 of these. That is why we folded it, so that we can cut 2. Now, this pouch is, the pattern is 8.5 by 11 inches. Now, that is the exact same size as a regular piece of computer or printer paper here in the United States. This is regular paper size, 8.5 by 11 inches. So if you're not someone who wants to download anything, that is okay. Just get yourself a regular sheet of printer paper, 8.5 by 11, because this prints on 8.5 by 11. Is the same size. So you can save yourself some time if you don't want to download. But if you are one of those people, I put this because some people like to save all of their projects and remembrances from their projects. So that's why we have this, to give you the materials, and this is indeed the pattern. So once you've folded your fabric, one thing to keep in mind though when you're folding your fabric, now this fabric, it seems that it's not going to matter what's up, what's down, or whether or not the lines are really perfectly straight. But there are some patterns, depending on what you have, where you may have some animals on them, or it may be a scene, and you want to make sure that you have your pattern going the right side, so that the sky is at the top and the grass is at the bottom, that sort of thing. So just look out for that. And when you fold your fabric in half, you want to fold it in a way that will give you a lot of room, or the most room, so that when you put your pattern down, you're going to be able to cut around it. For instance, I think if I fold, I'm using a fat quarter here, and I think if I fold the fat quarter this way, it's a lot thinner, and so I can get that paper on there, but I'm going to choose to fold it the other way because it gives me a little more room on each side of the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it the way I had it the first time. So I'm going to have the bright sides kissing each other. There we go. And one thing I want to point out too, especially for those that may be new, or as a reminder to those who are old sewers, not old in age, but been sewing for a long time. Well, old sewers too. I want to point out the selvage. Now the selvage is one end of the fabric that is, when they bolt the fabric, then the selvage is what keeps the fabric from unraveling. Now, sometimes it's more prominent and sometimes it's not. On this fabric, it's not too prominent, but sometimes there's that edge of the fabric where they put the copyright sometimes, who the fabric is by, what the fabric is made of. They use that little space sometimes to write messages about the fabric. This one doesn't have a message on it, but we can see the selvage. We can see that lighter part, that line that's going, that little light line. And so we don't want to cut that. So when we fold our fabric, we want to be mindful to also avoid the selvage, okay? So we're going to put this down right here. This is our pattern here. And then we're going to get our pins, and we're going to pin our pattern to the fabric. Now, I like starting in the corner. The main thing about pinning is to make sure that everything is smooth, and to make sure it says cut 2. So you want to make sure that you're grabbing the underside. You want to make sure you're grabbing 2 layers of fabric when we pin. So that's the main thing. There's no rhyme or reason to how you pin. I like grabbing the corners at one point, and then I just keep it smooth as I go down. And so however you want to do it, keep it smooth. And the other thing to keep in mind is when you're pinning, you don't want to have the pins so that they look like this. See, because we don't want the pins going over the paper, because we're going to come here with scissors. So just keep the pins in off the paper. That's one of the other things you just have to keep in mind. And so I'm going to go ahead, keeping things smooth. I'm going to pin. I believe that the more pins, the better. It just cuts better because things are more stabilized the more pins that you use. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a lot of pins all around here to help keep this pattern in place. Now this is really our cutting guide or pattern that we're using is really, like I said, it's just a regular sheet of paper. Patterns that are usually for dressmaking and that the pattern people who make patterns sell, they're usually a thinner, more pliable type of paper, and so they're a little easier to work with because they're thinner and they don't have all the bulk that this regular sheet of paper has. So I'm going to go ahead and put pins all around here, and then again making sure that you're getting both layers and that it's smooth on both sides. And we're going to go ahead and get some pins down here in the bottom, and I'm going to put a pin here, and I'm going to put one more pin right here, and I think we will have it. So, all right. Okay, now I'm going to get my scissors and I am going to cut this out. I'm going to cut by keeping as close to the edge of this pattern as possible. Just following the edge and keeping close to the edge. All right, and there is no wrong or right way. It's just a matter of keeping close to the edge. One of the things that I mentioned earlier on one of the other posts was about the scissors, and you do want to have a dedicated pair of scissors that are just for fabric, and every time you use them it's going to be a real joy because they're going to cut so beautifully because they will have only cut fabric. All right, so just stay close to the edge, and all right, and we're gonna just cut as straight as we can, and take your time. There's no hurry. All right, and so here you go, and all right, okay. All right, now we have cut our pouch out. Now we're going to take the pins out, and okay, let's see, this is kind of, let me just get this. Okay, all right, so now let's get these pins out. Okay, here is our pouch, the pieces for our pouch. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to go to the top. So our pouch, the long way is the side, and the shorter cross way here is going to be the top and the bottom. So these are the sides, the parts that, the 11 inches that run long. So we're going to go up to the top, and we're going to just fold it, roll it in a little. I'm going to come in closer so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm just taking, I'm very barely, the least amount that I can take and still get it to fold over. That is what I'm doing. Okay, and I'm going to just fold this over, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the iron to help me keep this in place. So the least amount It's not even a 1/4 inch, maybe barely, but the least amount that you can get and still get this to fold over, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take my iron and I'm going to press it. Again, we're not going to go back and forth so much, but we're going to press, and we're going to press it across. Press it across. Okay. And, all right. And just kind of hold it so it'll, this section right here didn't, we want to press and press. So we're just barely getting it to roll over. Is my iron even on? It's on, but okay. So we're going to do that again because we want that to be pressed down. All right. So we want to press this and press in. Okay. Barely a 1/4 inch. Whatever we can roll over without roll over. The least amount we can roll, we want to roll. Then when we have it rolled over, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to roll it over again. Again, just not even a 1/4 inch, just a little roll, the least that we can roll. And we're going to press that. And we're going to roll and press and roll and press and roll and press. And we're making this little lip here on the top of our pouch. Okay, and okay, and then once we get that done, we're going to take some pins and we're going to, it may be a little hot, but we're going to take some pins, just put a few pins to help hold it in place, because we're going to do the second one, and then after we do the second one, we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew this down. And believe me, us sewing this little rolled lip down is going to be, in my opinion, the most difficult thing we have to do with this pouch. And that is only because it's such a narrow lip, and if you're a new sewer, you might have trouble keeping that straight line or staying on. So we're just going to go really slowly. But once we have done this, we're halfway there. Okay, so we're going to do it again. The long ways are the sides, and the top, we're going to take this and roll it the least amount we need just to say we got it rolled. And we're going to roll that and kind of hold it down until we get our iron. And then we're going to, you can't see me. Okay, so now we're going to roll it, hold it until we get our iron done. And just roll barely rolled over, and we're going to hold it here. And like I say, this is the most difficult thing that we're going to do with the whole pouch. And so now we're going to roll it over again. Very little, just the least amount we can roll to still, ooh, it's very hot. Okay, so the least amount we can roll. Ooh, okay, and we're going to come with the iron and press it down and all across. Okay, and now that we've done that one, we are going to get some pins to hold this one. Oh, it's really hot. Really hot. So we get a few pins to hold that one. Okay. All right, so now that we have done that, we are going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to make our first stitch on our pouch. All right, so we're going to take both of these and we're going to go to the sewing machine. Always when I first sit down and I'm sewing for the first time that day, or I'm sewing on a new project, I always like to just sew on a scrap piece of fabric just to make sure that everything is going to be okay, so that if something is not okay, I don't ruin my project that I'm working on. So I have here a scrap piece of fabric. Always make sure that your threads are going to the back. And now I'm going to just put this scrap yarn under the presser foot, and I am going to sew. I'm going to go a little faster. And I'm going to go backwards and forward. Okay. Everything seems to be, let's see how the seams look. Okay. All right, the seams look pretty good. Now, the other thing is I'm using black thread. I'm using black thread so that you can see my seams better. Ordinarily, you know, with something like this, I would be using maybe a yellow, a pink, a beige, something that would blend in and kind of get hidden in the fabric. The idea is to get your yarns to blend and be hidden by the fabric. So I'm using black, which I would never use on this fabric if I were just making a regular project, but I wanted to use a contrasting color to help you see my stitching better. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my presser foot down. I'm going to be looking at the middle of the split in my presser foot. Always find some kind of mark to help guide you. So the idea is that we want to stay on this little lip. We don't want to fall off. We want to stay on, and we want to stay as straight as we possibly can. We may go a little curve here and there, but we don't want to have anything that looks too noticeable. We want to try to keep as straight as we can. It may not be perfect, but it doesn't always have to be perfect, but it just has to be good. So we're going to go for perfect. And okay, so I'm putting the presser foot down and I'm looking at the center of my presser foot. That's where I'm going to try to keep my needle. That's going to be like my guide. So let me get this here. Now, when you start your first stitch in a project, or when you're just starting a stitch, you want to lock the stitches down, kind of like tying them. So the way you would do that on sewing machine is you're going to go forward a few stitches, hit the reverse, wherever your reverse is, go backwards, and then come forward again. And that will kind of like, that's tying those stitches. Now, my machine and your machine may have the same thing, depending on what kind of machine you have, is, okay, so I'm going to start. Okay, so you see for a while it wasn't moving. It was just going up and down in the same place because it automatically will tie it for me. Okay, so now I'm going to keep my eye on that split in that presser foot, and I'm going to follow that along. So always find a little guide if you can to help you, and take the pins out ahead of time. And I'm going to keep going here. I'm following the guide. There's no need to rush. You can go very slowly. If you're new, please go slow. And even if you're experienced, because we're sewing on such a thin edge, go slow. And most machines have a way for you to adjust the speed. So adjust your speed to go slow here. And like I said, what we're doing here is probably the most difficult thing that we're going to do in this whole project. So take your time and just let it flow. Now we're coming to the end, so I'm going to start finding my reverse. I'm going to reverse, and now I'm going to go forward. And so now I just tied that string, and now I'm going to disengage. All right, let's see what we have. Okay, so there we have one side of our pouch done. We're going to do the other side now. And, okay. And we're going to put the presser foot down, keeping that same. I'm going to be still watching the center. Let me get this out of here. Okay, let's go up. All right. All right, so again, you want to go forward a few stitches, go back a few stitches, and then go forward again, and that will tie your threads. Okay, unless you have a machine where it'll tie it for you. Okay, so mine is tying it for me at the beginning. I'm going to keep my eye down the middle here. I don't want to fall off the edge. And I don't want my seams to be too crooked. But there again, if you're using thread that blends in with your fabric, then you can a lot of mistakes or a lot of things that you might notice with dark thread. You're not going to notice if you have a thread that really blends in with your fabric. So that's really important. And so we're just going to go slowly here. We're not in a rush. We're just enjoying being on the sewing machine and sewing. All right, so we're coming up to the end. We want to find our reverse. And now we're going to reverse and go forward. And now we're going to disengage. Okay. All right, so now we have 2 of these. We're ready to go back to our work table.